Good afternoon to everybody listening on the internet. My name is Colton Steiner, and welcome to the Siesta Podcast. So, today's episode, the second episode of the Siesta Podcast, already on number 2. This is kind of fun. I kind of like it. So, hopefully, thank you for joining in. If you like the first episode, just let me know on Twitter and or Instagram at @S_Colton for both of those. But yeah, this is something I'm really hoping it kind of takes off for me because for me, it's very fun to do. I find a lot of enjoyment in it, and it allows me to express my thoughts in a broader manner than just a YouTube video or a Twitter post. But yeah, today's episode kind of covers some of my favorite things. It's sports and movies, and that's kind of what this whole podcast is about. The Siesta podcast. It's a party over here. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns playoffs, thoughts on them, and my favorite movies of all time versus the best movie of all time, in my opinion, and how I think those two are different. So first off, let's talk about Cleveland Browns football. Now, if you guys don't know, I'm a Cleveland Browns football fan. I've been a fan, I would say, about since 2003, 2004. That's when I really started kind of watching football. As I was like 7, I want to say. I started Ohio State as an Ohio State fan and kind of broadened my range to a Buckeye fan because, unfortunately, I've never been able to watch a good Browns team in my lifetime. Aside from the 2007 team that unfortunately didn't make the playoffs, and this 2020 team that is fighting to make a playoff spot now. So right now, they're really control their own destiny because after their unfortunate and kind of humiliating loss to the New York Jets this past Sunday, the Browns control their own destiny. They win, they're in the playoffs. They lose, they're out. And that's kind of poetic, I would say. It's nothing in Cleveland is given, everything is earned. So that's what Browns fans and pretty much every Clevelander in Ohio has been saying since I would say the last 52 years before they won the NBA championship with LeBron in 2016. Nothing is given, everything is earned in Ohio. And that's something that the Browns kind of solidified on Sunday, unfortunately. And I think do I think they will make the playoffs? I believe we can. There were unfortunate circumstances on Sunday that really caused the Browns to have major issues with their top 4 wide receivers missing the game. So that's a big aspect that you got to remember, that they didn't have Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Cardale Hodges. So those 4 guys, along with 2 starting offensive linemen with Jedrick Wills and Wyatt Teller both missing, just caused a whole plethora of problems on the offense. And when you're missing, like, how many people is that? 6 key players just on the offense. That's a big problem. And the biggest problem with this Browns team is their defense. So they had to rely on their defense to make plays, which unfortunately, like we've seen all season, they weren't able to do. So the first question, I gotta say, will the Browns make the playoffs? I think the Browns have the capability to do that. And it all comes down to running the right plays on offense and creating a good run game. When the Browns played the Jets, they didn't have a run game, and we saw what happened in that game and how they were shut down through the air with none of their starting receivers. And when you have, I'm not trying to diss on the practice squad players that showed up and tried their best to make plays on Sunday, but when they didn't even get like a snap with the quarterback in practice, that's going to create major issues because you don't know the speed, you don't know their quickness, you don't know what they are like as a receiver. When you're as a quarterback, you're in practice with these guys all like week after week, and then those guys leave, and then you got to get equated to new guys. So it's a big challenge. And I would like to see, like, everyone's complaining about the Browns, like this is typical Cleveland Browns fashion, but you got to put it in perspective. Say Aaron Rodgers didn't have Devontae Adams, say Patrick Mahomes didn't have Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill or Sammy Watkins, you got to take away those key aspects. And would any other quarterback really do well in these situations? And Baker, unfortunately, he got sacked 4 times and fumbled 3 times. So those fumbles really made an impact on the game. So I'm not giving Baker Mayfield a pass. But when you get your top 4 wide receivers taken away from you the day of the game, that is an incredibly hard feat to overcome, because any quarterback's going to struggle. I don't care who you are. So that's why I'm not overly concerned about Baker Mayfield's play on Sunday. Didn't throw an interception. He had some wide receivers and tight ends that dropped balls numerous times, which when your tight ends aren't blocking, that isn't going to create a good run game, because tight ends are good blockers, but if they're not catching balls either, that's kind of ruining the point of not running the ball. So hopefully that made sense right there. I kind of went on a little ramble there about the tight ends, but here's the thing. The Browns control their own destiny. I said this twice before. And will they make the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. I do not trust, and this is not on the offense. I trust our offense when we're fully healthy and we have all our players lined up. I don't trust this defense. I don't trust us against the pass. And this defense was made for a pass rush. And when we don't have a solid pass rush, that's just not going to sit well with our secondary. We give them more than 4 seconds to pass the ball, a receiver is 100% guaranteed is going to be open. And that's the struggle we've seen all season with this team. And it's hard for me to bail them out because of injuries, because it's always this conversation about the next man up. And as much as I want to ridicule and complain about the defense, they have had injuries, but that's not giving them excuse for the sad and pathetic plays that we have seen all season. The blown coverage, the miscommunication in the secondary between the safeties and the cornerbacks, just pathetic play by both ends of the ball in Sunday's game. And going forward, I'm not too concerned about our offense, but I am concerned about our defense. So can we ever compete for the Super Bowl I would say is a question that I would follow that. And I'd say yes, most definitely. The Browns are definitely capable of competing for a Super Bowl with this offense that they have. And say the Browns do have a healthy defense. They kind of got screwed this year with Grant DuPlessis, Greedy Williams, and Ronnie Harrison all missing most of the season. So it's kind of unfortunate, but looking forward, you got to keep the future in mind. As heartbreaking of a loss as the Jets game was and how it makes making the playoffs even harder, you got to remember going forward next year, I'm so confident in this offensive scheme that Kevin Stefanski has run. And I think the Browns are in very capable hands of competing for a Super Bowl. And if we're able to unload on our defense and get some very talented, I would say even some average secondary players, we're going to be really hard to defeat. Because if our offense can score, 42 points against the Baltimore Ravens, I have no doubt in my mind that this team can compete with anybody next year if we have a solid defense and a solid pass coverage. So the Browns, they have a good future going forward. And Browns fans, keep your head up. 4 years ago, we were cheering for an 1-15 team, and following that, it was an 0-16 team. So we went 1-31 in 2 seasons, and now we're complaining about a team that can go 10-6 or 11-5. So there's a lot of hope and a lot of good vibes going forward for this Browns team, and they have a really good chance of winning the AFC North next year. I mean, we almost won it this year in Week 15. If you would have told me that the Browns would be competing for the AFC North a title, I would have laughed at the beginning of the season. But you know what? Unfortunately, we weren't able to get it this year, but there's always next year of winning the AFC North title, and playoff hopes are still alive. So next year, I think we can easily compete for the AFC title, but the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to be that one team that I think that's going to be really hard to beat. But hey, And on any given day, any team can beat anybody. It doesn't matter if you're the lowly scum at the bottom of the barrel, you'll be able to beat the great. It's when the score is 0-0 at the beginning of the game, anything can happen. So it depends on how the Browns stack up on defense in the offseason, because I think the Browns, if they can get some average secondary players, like I said, we can easily compete for a AFC title and easily compete for an AFC North title. And then, heck, we could do that this year, and our defense was still atrocious to watch. So I complain a lot about this team, and I think that's an easy thing to do because you see the Browns' history. You see how we've been playing in the last 20 years. We've known nothing but failure, and we've had nothing but failure. We've only gone to the playoffs one time in the last 20 years. So it's easy to get down on this team and have flashbacks to when we were bad at numerous times. Trust me, I know those are situations where I kind of got to remember and tell myself the same thing, because you know what, it's a hard road to avoid, especially with our history. But we got to learn as Browns fans that it's not always going to be a depressing game to watch. We've seen that numerous times this season. The first half against the Tennessee Titans, where Baker Mayfield threw 4 touchdown passes in the first half. I was so excited, and while they did allow them to come back in the second half, that first half feeling was something I don't remember ever seeing from a Browns football team in the last 20 years. So a lot of potential moving forward, and when we look at this team, Myles Garrett, Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, in Kareem Hunt even. This team is stacked on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball with Myles Garrett, as I said, and Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward is an absolute, what's the right word for it? An impactful player in the secondary that unfortunately has been sidelined by injuries numerous times in his career. But hey, this team, this offense, and if we can get a couple players in the secondary, maybe another linebacker in there, I think they have a very good potential to win the AFC North and compete for the AFC title and maybe even make it to the championship Super Bowl next year. So a lot of hope as always going forward. But hey, it's just me. I would love to hear what your guys' opinions are on the Browns. What is their weakest part of their team? I think it's pretty clear that it's the defensive side of the ball. And if you disagree, just let me know on Twitter at @S_Colton or on Instagram. So thank you guys for listening to that segment. We're going to move on to my favorite movie of all time versus the best movie of all time. And I think there is something worth noting. There is a difference, in my opinion, versus my favorite movie and the best movie of all time. I mean, both of them rewatchable as all get out. I can watch them numerous times and they can never get old. First one, my favorite movie of all time is Avengers Endgame. If you guys don't know what it is the second to last segment of the phases 1 through 3 in the MCU, with Far From Home closing out on the first 3 phases. But it brought together 21 films before it, and whether it's a Thor movies, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, some Ant-Man, a couple Ant-Man movies in there, Doctor Strange. There's a whole lot of movies in there that are brought together in one film. And I think that's just magical in itself and just shows what a group of directors and a team can do together when they work to create a common outcome. And as I said on the last episode with The Last Jedi, when directors don't work together, it just creates nothing but a mess. It's an absolute mess if you try and force together so many storylines that you didn't even really want to create, but another director created, and you didn't really come to a common goal. But what the Russo brothers did in Avengers Endgame, it was absolutely beautiful. Heck, they even had a couple other directors appear in the movie. So it was just fun to see. And the epic ending, the final battle, the 40-minute final battle was just, it didn't even feel like 40 minutes. It went by so quick, and it was so entertaining, and there were so many great moments when you see Peter Parker swinging from Ant-Man's arm, when you see him and Valkyrie on the back of a horse. It's just absolutely amazing to watch. And when Captain America and Iron Man have like such a great ending to their storylines. I mean, the perfect ending when in the first Avengers, Tony tells Cap that everything special about him came out of a bottle, but that is not true. And when Captain America tells Tony, you're not the guy to make the sacrifice play. The first Avengers movie, and then you watch the last Avengers movie with those two doing exactly what the opposite of what the other person said, with Captain America lifting Mjolnir, basically becoming the god of Asgard. It's incredible. And Tony making the sacrifice play to win at the end of the day. And it's just incredible. And his relationship with Captain America and Steve Rogers, and seeing it grow from like kind of like a budding competition between the two, like which one's better, to just respecting each other. And it's just a great moment to see. And that movie in itself, let's talk about it for a second. That final battle, I know I said how epic it was, but the entire thing, the only people that have really, held Mjolnir is Thor and Vision. I believe so. And until Captain America lifts that freaking sucker up, man, that was so amazing to watch. I get chills every time I see that hammer lift up in the air. And oh my word, if you do not get chills when you see that little circle appear behind Captain America and his buddy Sam start coming up on in his earpiece, I don't think you're a true Marvel fan, because when you see portals start to open, the music come on, and when you hear Cap say Avengers and then assemble, a line we've been waiting for him to say for over 21 movies, heck, even since the end of Age of Ultron, he teased us with Avengers, and then it cuts to the credits. So it was such a pleasing moment to see, in all those characters from 21 other movies just line up side by side, facing the biggest threat any of them has ever faced. And with the world on the line, it was created such an epic and fulfilling moment too. So, but I would say one of the most emotional moments I've seen in the MCU was when Tony Stark said, "And I," with the gauntlet in his right hand, because making everything right, he said, "And I am Iron Man." What an absolute iconic role. The guy, the individual, I say it's the first movie. I don't count the Incredible Hulk as the first MCU. I know they count it in the phases, but you know what? To me, Iron Man is the creator, the GOAT, the original, the OG man that started the whole thing. And his last line in the first Iron Man was, "And I am Iron Man." That was the last line of the movie, and his last line, aside from "Hey Pep," was, "And I am Iron Man." And what a great ending for a character. And it's as sad as it was to see Iron Man die, I think that was really the only really outcome that could happen. I mean, there's not a time that I watch it that I don't really tear up watching that, because you see him grow from this billionaire playboy philanthropist in the first Iron Man to seeing a loving father, a good friend, and just an absolute I would say a soldier to sacrifice himself for the common good. So what an absolute amazing movie, and that's why that's my favorite movie of all time. The throwbacks to other movies and the lines and the final conclusions to everybody's storyline, it was just perfect in my opinion. And I'm excited to see what happens with the MCU going forward. And let's just talk about this. Avengers Endgame is the most successful movie, according to the box office, of all time. It beat out Avatar, it beat out Titanic, and what it was able to do at the box office is amazing. Yes, absolutely amazing. But everyone says like, "Oh, it made so much money," but like, it wasn't the perfect film. Yeah, it may not have been the perfect film. Like there's plot lines that don't make sense sometimes, but just the way it was able to come together and close off 21 movies is just incredible in itself. And I don't really, me personally, as much of a accomplishment that it was to create a $2.7 billion movie. It just, I'm more happy with the story outcome. It can make all the money in the world, but the ability to close off a franchise like that and set it up for a future is just amazing to see. So, Avengers Endgame, my favorite movie of all time. But move on to the best movie of all time. And I think it's the highest rated movie on IMDb and sitting at a 9.2 out of 10. And I think that's a low ranking for this movie. I mean, you have The Shawshank Redemption, and I don't think I've met a single person who doesn't like this movie. I mean, it's not the visual effects, nothing out of the ordinary. It's like, the acting is what makes it great. The story is what makes it great. The twists and turns of the movie, the unexpected ending with Andy Dufresne. You expect him to take his own life, but instead he creates a new one by sneaking out of the prison that he's been working over 20 years to do. And just an excellent original storyline that was based off the book by Stephen King. And it has so many likable characters too. You got Andy Dufresne, obviously the guy who's not really used to, he's not a prisoner. He got framed for a crime that he didn't commit, and he's just got worn down, and it was great to see. And his best friend, Red, another great character. And I love the friendship that those two have. And when he does escape, and when Andy Dufresne does escape out of Shawshank, and Red is missing his own friend, you see how much of a relationship they've built together, kind of a bromance, I would say. And it's sure, they're like, you do wonder how Red remembers that one Mexican village that Andy told him. But you know what? It created a great ending, a great meetup. And some people didn't really like how he did meet up with him at the end, but I think it's perfect. I think you see Andy Dufresne get out of Shawshank, leave a life that he was on top of the world. He was a banker, and then his life gets thrown away for a crime he didn't commit. But it's just a brilliantly made movie. And it's what else is there to say about it? I mean, when you look at original movie and adapted from a book, and when you compare it to Avengers Endgame, which was adapted from 21 previous movies, and they're completely different storylines, but they have a great aspect in different ways. So Avengers Endgame, let's look at that. Great storyline, wrapped up 21 movies. Shawshank, just brilliantly written and directed. I mean, you make it from a book, and then you put it on screen. And the great thing about this is you can't create a sequel. It can't be remade. And if anybody remakes it or tries to, it's never going to live up to what they were able to do. I mean, Morgan Freeman, he's iconic. You can't replace him as an actor, and as well as Tim Robbins as Andy Dufresne. And Warden Norton, played by Bob Gunton, just an absolute great character to play the Warden. I mean, you see him, and he creates this villain. He makes you believe he's the villain just by the way he walks around, the way he treats his inmates, and the way he treats Andy forces him to pretty much be in prison for the rest of his life. Because when his buddy Tommy comes forward and tells Andy, I know you didn't commit this crime, because the cellmate that I was with for about a year told me that he was able to frame someone for a crime that he committed. And then when he went to Warden with it, he ended up killing Tommy. And that's when you saw that's what Andy's never going to get out of Shawshank. And when Andy was finally able to make that hole in the wall, climb out, and crawl through 4 football fields of basically sewage, which just is disgusting to watch. But man, absolute great movie. And if you haven't seen either of them, sorry if I spoiled it for you, but you kind of should know by the title in the description of what I've been talking about today. So Shawshank, absolutely great movie. I think I'm gonna go watch that again after I finish this podcast, because it's such a rewatchable movie. And same with Avengers Endgame. But I will say, the one thing about Avengers Endgame, you kind of have to watch Infinity War in order to watch Endgame, since it's a part 2. But definitely Shawshank, one you can watch over and over again without having to watch any other movie. And it's just a great ending. So thank you guys for listening, and you can go subscribe on iTunes and Google Podcast as well as Spotify. So I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!